Joy! That is this week's Advent focus. And friends, I'm so excited to be sharing with you from the very stage where I learned to sing hymns of praise to the God of my help. You see, from this very stage, I was homeless when I was on the praise team. I was being abused by my husband. Me and my 3 children were in such a dire situation, and I felt like a resident foreigner to joy. Sure, I sang about it, but I didn't know how to hold it. I didn't even know how to feel it. And I was so excited when Psalm 146 came up in the lectionary because this is what it says. And this is just a brief synopsis. That the Lord releases the imprisoned. He gives sight to those who are blind. He lifts up those who are bent low. He loves those who seek him, and he protects the resident foreigner. He is a father to the fatherless, and he is a husband to the widows. You see, I needed all of that. I was hungry. I was blind. I was homeless. Yeah, sure, I was on a praise team, but I felt like a resident foreigner to joy. I felt like a phony. I didn't know how to capture this thing, let alone even feel it. But you know what I did learn in that season? To keep moving forward. And as I was preparing for this message, I was pleasantly surprised when the book of Ruth came up earlier in the readings this week in my devotional time, because Naomi and Ruth are one of my favorite stories. Now, Naomi is a lady from the Old Testament who, her and her husband and her 2 sons went to a foreign land because they were famished, they were starved. Their sons end up marrying women from the land. All 3 of the men died. Naomi becomes bitter, and she becomes bent low. And she says, "No longer will you call me Naomi. You will call me Mara, for the Lord has afflicted me. Go your own ways, daughters. I can't do anything more for you." But Ruth would not leave her. Ruth clung to her. And let me tell you, from this very stage, Jesus was my Ruth. He clung to me even when I told him I didn't want him in my heart. Even when I tried to praise him, I told him I didn't want him because if this was the life he had for me, what was joy? Where was it? I couldn't find it. But the story gets better, just as it did with Naomi. You see, Naomi hears whispers that there's wheat, there's food in her homeland. So she goes back. Ruth goes. Ruth literally lays down her life in service to her mother-in-law. God saw and he blessed it because he loves those who are bent low. He loves those who love him. She ends up marrying a man named Boaz, and Ruth delivers a baby boy. Now Naomi's in the center square, and all of the women gather around her and say, "No longer can you be called Mara, for God has seen your affliction and has granted you joy and peace in the form of a grandson." Now in my dark season, every Wednesday night, I would run into this young man named Spencer. He was so kind to me. He didn't make me feel bad for being homeless. He didn't make me feel bad for any of the things that I was going through at that time. He just was kind. Did I know years later that he would end up marrying my daughter and giving me the very, very best thing in life? This joyous little girl right here. She is my joy baby. Friends, I learned how to trust God in a season that was very difficult for me. 7 years I've been free. 7 years I have let the Lord bring me to a state of joy. And I can look back on this stage and in some of the worst times in my life and see that God was planting hope and peace in the midst of my world. And without this season, I wouldn't have this precious baby girl. No longer can they call me bitter, because I rejoice in the God of my salvation. And friends, if you need hope, it's here. If you need peace, it's here. It is in the form of joy with a man named Jesus, who will cling to you even when you tell him to go away. He will restore to you all of your hope. And for me, I pray this holiday season that just as this little baby brings me hope, joy, peace, and love, that you will find ways to see joy in some of your darkest places, because the light is there. Thank you, friends.